There you go. All right, so let's get going with this. Thank you for being here, uh, Octavia, to begin with. She's always been on every single one of these Zooms up to this point, and she's here again. Gagan, is that how you pronounce your name? Gagan, can you hear me? Ah, and please correct me and sort of just let me know if I should pronounce your name differently. I don't always do well. Okay, Gagan. Uh, Gagan. Okay. So now I can't seem to hear all that well. I am actually at the JFK airport waiting for my flight back to San Francisco. So you'll notice that there will be a little bit of noise at times. These things are supposed to cancel some of that noise, and if it gets too loud, just let me know, okay? Uh, and so thank you, Gagan. Thank you, Ayush, Napal, Adrian, Vishwa, and AC. Thanks, and Abdallah. Thanks for coming into this lesson. Now, I try to keep this very brief so that you guys don't fall asleep and, just get bored. Because at the end of the day, the point of these kinds of reviews is to sort of just point to you what I think might be the most interesting or the most important topics or subtopics in each of the chapters. Last week we did not do this kind of review because we were just beginning the class. So today I'm going to be reviewing just a few of those topics. Again, the most important selected topics for chapters 1, 2, and 3. Tomorrow I will do an overview, basically a preview of chapters 4, 5, 6, and 7. So there will be 4 chapters for this coming week. So we're busy. Okay, and actually I want to use this couple of minutes to remind everybody, including the people that are going to be watching this video after the session today, that we indeed have a very busy week. So I'm going to go to announcements to sort of review what I set out this morning. And I've been sort of working and catching up to the setup of this class, and I'm almost there. Actually, I feel quite good about it. And as you can see, we actually, in week number 2, we have 4 chapters. And the way I'm doing it now is I'm putting the first half of the week to cover about half of the content. In this case, that will be chapters 4 and 5. And all the items that I call deliverables that have obviously a score attached to them, and that will be affecting and somehow building into your final grade. They actually going to be placed that half of those in the first half of the week, which in this case probably not really half, right? So the first 4 days of the week, so it'll be Thursday.
Federal law requires wearing a mask at all times
then
while at the
the
airport.
remaining content for
Failure to
the
comply
week,
with
in this
this
case chapters
requirement
6
may
and
result
7,
in denial
will
of
actually
boarding
be
the aircraft,
in the last 3
removal
days
from
of
the
your
airport,
weekend.
and
But again,
civil
hopefully
penalties.
you can advance your work way ahead of that. That will be kind of ideal. Now notice also that next week there will be also several items there, including chapter 8, 12, and 13. And notice that also between chapter 8 and the other 2 chapters, we've got midterm number 1. And that will cover all the chapters up to chapter 8. So you have 8 chapters already at the sort of the middle of next week. It's just that's how fast we are moving. And again, it's not going to be extremely sort of rigorous. I'm talking about the actual exam. It's simply just recalling some of the terms, definitions, and in some cases probably it asks you to apply it to a very, very simple sort of story or example. So it's very, very simple. Just a matter of you sort of being basically somewhat knowledgeable, somewhat understanding the concepts and other things or other ideas that come into each of these chapters. So with that in mind, that's how I'm going to be reviewing these chapters. So as I said, I'm going to be doing review from last week, chapters 1, 2, and 3. And right now you're looking at lecture notes for chapter 1. So LN1. make it a little bigger so you can see it better, I hope. Let's see. Okay, it is working. That's fine. All right, so then, again, if you were not in the sessions previously, you probably don't remember me saying the following. I said every chapter has lecture notes that I sort of borrow from the authors of the book, and I simply just sort of organize it differently at times, and also include my own sort of additional comments and additional examples into these lecture notes. So as you can see in front of you, you've got basically the sections in the textbook for chapter 1, and you see that I sort of divided them into lectures or lectures notes that are actually labeled LN, lecture notes. In this case, the first one means chapter, and the second one in this case it means section 1 of chapter 1, and so that's how it's organized. So as you might remember, when you read your chapter, you actually essentially you were answering these questions. So if you go back to your reading of chapter 1, they didn't set it up this way in the chapter itself. I did. So you've got basically questions, and then you have the book sort of answering those questions. And the way that we do this, the way I think it's useful for you to do this, is that when you know what the question is, you know what you're searching for. And so if you read the notes here, you will be able to basically answer many of the questions in the exam or the quizzes or the reading checks that actually relate to that question, because they're giving you the answer right there. So, example, what kinds of products does the business offer? Well, you talked about products that are sort of tangible, or intangible. So products that are tangible are things that you can actually touch. I don't know, soap, cereal, a car. They're all tangible products. And on the other side, there will be sort of offerings that are not tangible. They're intangible, meaning that you cannot really touch it. It has an essence to them. They exist, but it's also almost in your mind, and you experience it in some way. Haircuts. You can really take it away. You experience it, and you get a nice haircut, for example. Movie. Going to watch a movie at the theaters, which you probably haven't done for the last 2 years, but you're gonna be doing that. I'm guessing, coming up in after June 15th. So that's the difference between basically the main kind of offerings that you see in a business. So now that if you have any question that relates to that kind of concept about what is a product that a business offers, you know now that it's talking about goods or services, tangible or intangible. All right. So that's kind of the thing that I want you to sort of take away from this. Obviously, it also talked about something called factors of production. Well, here we're talking about the kinds of things that you internally should have or will have to start a business. I mean, you actually need labor, meaning at least you. Yeah. Oh, by the way, yeah. Question? Anybody? Okay. Correct. And nobody did after this one, so I think it's probably a moot offering. So we'll see. Yeah, I'll send an announcement out tonight once I get back into the SFO, and then I'll ask you if anybody wants to take on that pathway, on that grading track. Yeah, you're right. I forgot to say that actually. Thank you, Octavio. By the way, just interrupt me if you have questions, because I normally am looking at the notes, I'm looking at other things, and I don't notice who's actually raising their hand or whatnot. So please do interrupt me at any point. Okay. So then you've got again the factors of production. So the point here is that you have to realize that you need certain, you can call them resources or factors that you need to have to get a business going. You need people, labor. You need people to also manage, which is management. And within that, you have some that are actually entrepreneurial, meaning that people that are actually able to create something from basically nothing. And so you need creative people in that sense that have some kind of risk-taking characteristics, because they're going to put in their own money and probably other people's money into this venture. And you also have other things like capital. I mean, you can get capital from other people, and that means you get sort of investments from others, or even from yourself first, and then from others, to then start a business as well. So this is what this is talking about. So this is kind of internal factors that you need to consider. Now, hold on, I touched the wrong button. Let me go back. So we're back to this. There are actually other sort of factors. I call them influences that a business considers. Besides their own factors of production that they have internally, they have to look at outside of themselves and see what is out there in the environment that affects me, the business, and also maybe the market itself, maybe the whole industry, or maybe the whole world, like a pandemic that affected obviously, everybody, and so that's what this is talking about. It's some of the other things that are outside. You're obviously going to be talking about competition. I mean, who is actually competing in my product line or in my market, in my industry? And this is not as easy as you might think. Back then there was a classic example of, for example, who was the competitors for Southwest Airlines? Have you heard anybody here has heard who is Southwest Airlines competing against? Nope. Yeah. Nope. Huh? Yeah, no. No. I mean, remember, this is what they think, right? And what people say. Right? They actually competing against something very unusual. Because we are talking about airline right now. So who are they competing against? Anybody? Well, getting closer. Now you're getting away from the airlines as the competitor. That's the point. It is not. They say that themselves that they actually compete against sort of like cars, or they compete against buses, or they compete against even trains that go basically across the country, because their pricing is such that they're actually competing against others that have the same kind of pricing, and but obviously Southwest is a lot more efficient, more effective because it's faster than them. So they're not really looking at Delta, United and others as competitors, because they're not in the same market. That's what they think. And so they've been profitable for the last, I don't know, for probably every year since the inception, probably back in 2000. I forget what the exact year. They're the only airlines that have been basically profitable the whole time. And so they actually have a different sort of business model, and that's how they operate. That's how they behave. And so that's the reason that actually I think is kind of interesting example of what is competition. To them, it's not the other airlines, it's the other transportation modes that they actually price against. Okay, so I think it's kind of interesting to look into these kinds of things. So that's the competition. Okay, that's something outside of you that is going to influence what you're going to be offering and how you're going to be basically reacting to their own offers, and so on and so on. Then there's also the social environment, right? There's actually changes in for example, demographics. The tastes of customers change from group to group. At least you might think so, and I think it's correct in certain ways, in certain parts. So demographics also have a lot to do with what you can offer and how much you can actually charge for that. It is said that most of the people that consume, the age group that consumes the most is around 30 to 55. Those are the people that actually are making the most money and are actually consuming. Once you get into the upper years, like me, I'm actually now I'm 56. Although I do still spend a lot. I shouldn't be spending that much, but people tend to slow down their spending. So that the way you approach them, each group, should be different. When you actually look at your offerings, you have to sort of cater to that kind of taste, cater to that kind of spending pattern based on demographics. So that's one example of what is a social environment. How it affects, how it influences your business. So I'm going to stop for a second. Questions? Anybody? Okay. Now, it also talks about, aging. I just kind of touched upon it. Diversity. You have to think about what that means. Is the diversity only in race? I don't think that's the case, actually. I mean, for me, diversity means every kind of diversity. People have different work experiences. They have different cultural experiences, maybe. They have different, basically, career advancement experiences, technology knowledge, and so on and so on and so on. There's tons of different experiences that actually make people diverse. So when I see that, I think of it that way. Although other people actually think of it differently than me. there's actually also globalization, and you probably have seen how the pandemic is going to probably sort of pull back on this movement of globalization that has been happening for the last, I don't know, it's been at least 30 years probably. It's been just growing and growing and growing. The tentacles of the networks that are attached to even every breakfast that you eat or every TV that you actually purchase is immense. I mean, you actually go through all kinds of networks to get your product from across the world onto your living room or into your kitchen. And so globalization has been a big part of your lives. You probably have thought that globalization is actually sort of something automatic, it's just there. But no, it's been actually purposely developed. And now, because of the by the way, and that caused other things that kind of were issues, right? For example, if you look at that notes, it says something like offshoring, or when jobs go away to a different country, that actually has caused some issues here. But overall, the government or the people that were involved, the companies, they thought that the world is better off when you go and produce in lower cost countries. So there's things like that actually are the implications that happen from those kinds of initiatives. Now, because of the pandemic, you will see a very big retrenchment in globalization. So that will be changed actually. It changed backwards now. So just keep that in mind as I'm moving my own table as you go through the reading on this. And there's also technological change. You know this already. I mean, you are part of that. You've seen. I mean, I change iPhones every year because because I cannot help myself. I have an iPhone 11, so I'm behind at the moment. But the technology keeps changing, and as things change, that changes a lot of other things. Just, when you have a change in one single product, that doesn't mean that it only changes that product. That it depends how ubiquitous that product happens to be. You're going to be actually seeing a wider effect of a change of product. So for iPhones, for example, they are used by many people, and whenever one changes, the features change, and it might be the case that it actually changes other sort of related products, and it's a wider implication. So technology is actually a big influence on your business. So now we talked about basically 4 in this chapter, right? Competition, the social environment, globalization, and technological changes. And so that's kind of the basic selected topics that I chose for chapter 1. And again, there will be others there that you might be interested in talking about. And if that's the case, just post them in the sort of the appropriate kind of discussion threads, because they all have these questions in there. Okay. So before I move on to chapter 2, economics, any questions on chapter 1?
May I have your attention, please?
I guess for now, no
For your
questions.
safety and security, please do not.
And as
leave
always,
baggage
I always say this.
unattended.
If you have a question later,
be removed
post it
immediately
in
and turned
discussion
over
threads
to
or
security.
inbox me as well. All right, let's go to chapter 2. If you want, let's actually then wait until the end. Yeah, like you suggested, and then we'll do it. Okay, please, that would be awesome. Lecture notes 2, economics. I mean, this is one of my favorite chapters because it really is foundational, but it has a lot of power in how you think about business. In fact, this is my undergraduate degree. I had an economics degree, and so I like this stuff. I'm not very good at it, but I still like it, and I went through it, and at least I passed these classes. But actually, it is interesting to know, and it's interesting to actually learn deeper the concepts that you can come from economics. And now, so I'll just start throwing at you some of the, I would say the classes that we offer at Foothill that are relevant to this discussion. You can do a deeper dive into these topics. So if you're interested in economics, I'm going to show you a couple of topics right now in here. But if you want to go deeper into any of these, you should take Economics 1A and Economics 1B. Okay, macro and microeconomics. Okay, so mostly I'm going to actually focus on this one here, supply and demand. And as you can see, there's actually and I think you probably have seen a lot of this in the past from some other class or even maybe a YouTube video. But it is important to understand what's the difference between supply and demand. And it looks pretty simple, and I think it is. And so that is sort of I always say supply and demand graph. So you can think of it as a like usually they have this vertical line and a horizontal line. Basically two variables, or no, I guess you could call variables. One is measuring something against another. As one changes, what's the changes on the other. And so in this case, you usually have supply on the vertical and the demand on the horizontal. I'm sorry, no, price on the vertical, and either demand or supply on the horizontal. And so you look at where the supply and the demand meet, and that will be what they call the equilibrium price. Now, you've seen the chapter already. I think you know what I'm talking about. I'm not showing you the actual lecture notes that are part of this, but you can actually do that on your own. But the biggest point here that I want to make is the following. What changes? What kind of changes sort of come across in this discussion of supply and demand? So I wanted to sort of make sure that you understand one point that's kind of important, but the book doesn't do a very good job of talking about. And so I sent you an actual announcement on Sunday or Saturday, I forget. And so I added some content to that topic under CP22, meaning the class participation posting threads from chapter 2. In this case, it's exactly the second one. So CP22. And so I added this kinds of verbiage about supply and demand. There's a difference between what is called supply, I'm talking about demand and quantity demanded. They sort of use that interchangeably, but basically it's different. Same thing with supply and quantity supply. Give me a second. Somebody's actually have to go to a meeting. All right, so let me go back to this. Okay. And so the point I want to make is that when there's a curve that is sort of already sort of graphed in this manner, demand is this way. I don't know if the video catches this correctly, but it's from left to right. That's demand, and from left upward to the right as well, that's supply. And so the question is, what kind of change sort of shows as a movement across those lines? So if I have a line of supply or demand, as you change price, then you actually change the location of the amount of supply or the amount of the demand. Well, that's movement within that curve. So the curve is made of those changes that only relate to price, versus actually, by the way, and that's actually referred to as quantity demanded or quantity supplied. Is when there's a movement along the line. And you'll see what I mean in a second, hopefully, why am I talking about this? There's also demand and supply. So this is the overall sort of number of lines that you can have that are sort of representing different conditions that are sort of fixed in time at any point in time. And so today, based on the influences out there, and based on your internal factors, what is your supply and demand possibilities? And so you actually have these kind of possible lines. And so here we're talking about shifting of the whole line. And so to do better, and by the way, before I go there, this table keeps moving. When you see that there's actually factors other than price involved, that means you're shifting the line. The whole line is sort of a different line. You're moving from one line to another line. When you're actually talking only about price, then you're actually moving along that single line. And that's important to understand, okay? And so, what kind of factors shift the, the demand or the supply curves? Well, here you're giving these kinds of examples. Yeah, Arthur? Questions? Now, what I did, because I want to be efficient, and I think it's easier to find materials that somebody else has done and done pretty well. I found this one here that is kind of brief and to the point, and it will show you what is the difference. He will actually explain much better than I did because he has graphs. He's done a pretty good job. He'll actually explain the difference between demand and quantity demanded and supply and quantity supplied. Okay, so please do watch his videos and sort of think through what he's saying and sort of attach it to what you read in chapter 2. Because it will be important to understand the difference between those two. Questions? All right, and so let's move on to chapter 3. In chapter 3, it's all about ethics. And as you might imagine, ethics has been taking a backseat, well, it used to take a backseat in most business classes. But since about maybe the 2000s, when there were all kinds of scandals, especially in accounting, actually, things have changed. There have been a lot more emphasis on talking about ethics, and ethics actually. I'm not sure even if we it should be sort of common sense that ethical behavior is good, but obviously not everybody follows that. For the vast majority of corporations, the vast majority of businesses, they follow the rules. They're ethical. But there will be some bad apples in the habits. So here's, this chapter gives you a few different frameworks of how to think about ethics. What is ethics from different perspectives, and essentially based on your own sort of values and how you think about ethics, you might attach yourself to a different framework, and based on that framework, you actually then be able to make maybe you could call them assessments or measurements of whether somebody is being ethical or not. And so this actually is very, I think it's a very interesting chapter to sort of dive into, because I think you find yourself, you'll say to yourself, I am ethical. I mean, automatically, that's who I am. Well, it's not as easy. There will be circumstances where you have people or circumstances in your business or in your career will actually place you in a very difficult situation. Are you gonna go and say yes to the boss, even though the boss is not doing something, maybe correctly? Would you have that courage to say no, or to do something else? So then, that's kind of the thing about that this chapter sort of reveals to you. It's not easy, but it's a big part of what you do in business now. So I'm not gonna go into anything specific in this case. I think you should probably go into it on your own and really go at it and ask me questions, okay, in the discussions. So questions on chapter 3. Just general questions on chapter 3.
For your safety and security, please do not leave baggage unattended. Unattended baggage will be removed immediately and turned over to security.
Well, I hope so, but I think they're all muted right now. Only AC Ramirez is that muted at the moment. Oh, I'm at the airport. Yes. Sorry. As I said, there will be actually some noise because I'm at the airport. I'm at JFK in New York, and I'm about maybe an hour away from taking my flight back to San Francisco. I come here to talk to my advisor I'm doing my EDD, my doctorate, and so I have to write a dissertation, which is a big paper, and I'm afraid of it, but I'm dealing with it. And by the way, so you hear some noise, and I apologize, but we're almost done. That takes care of some of the highlights, I guess, of what I wanted to sort of talk about with respect to chapters 1, 2, and 3. And again, my whole point here, so the overarching point here, is that you have in front of you these lecture notes that are set by questions. And again, you're going to be getting questions like these in different forms in the reading checks and also in the exam. And so, I'm hoping that you actually simply see that there's actually a very easy way, in my view, to actually study for the exam is by actually doing this, attaching the concepts to questions, and just read the lecture notes. It's a much more concise way, way to understand the concepts than reading the chapter. And so, but I actually it's better to read the chapter first and then come to the lecture notes to see that how it's organized a little differently. Anyway, I'll just say that's it for this review. If you have questions again about any of these, more deep questions, go back to the discussion threads and place the questions there. And so, even though I'll be emphasizing chapters 4, 5, 6, and 7 in this week in terms of discussions, I still go back to the first 3 chapters to see what's going on this week. So you can do that as well. I'll just do one more thing, and I will show you. Go back to the home page. It's kind of slow. And let me just reduce this a little bit. Now notice that in week 2, and this a little bit, you can't see the whole thing. Let me just see if I can make it even smaller. There will be another session, live session tomorrow. This will be a little more formal. I still have maybe 30, maybe 45 minutes to preview or overview the 4 chapters that are going to be coming up. It's still going to be very fast, so I don't want to bore you too much. And so, come tomorrow if you don't mind at 4:30. And I always put a plus at the end. So it says 4:30 to 5 p.m. I'm hoping that I don't take 30 minutes away from your life. But as you can see, I always run over, by about 10, 15 minutes. And so obviously you can come and go whenever you want out of these sessions. These are all optional, right? But I think as we move along in the weeks, I think you'll find this at least reassuring, because I will be covering things that you have already read or you will read, and you say, oh, I know that I'm on the right track, and I'm at least doing the right things. So I would recommend that you come to these sessions for at least for that reason. So here notice that we got the check-in coming up tomorrow, and since the first check-in of the quarter, it's very small number in terms of the points for your final grade, but it's important. You don't want to be away of your desired grade by 0.8, which is each of these check-ins are worth 0.8 points. And if you're away from that, from that A or A minus, whatever it is that you want, then you're going to kick yourself. These are very easy point systems. I'm not tricking you. There's nothing really all that complex. You just follow some of the steps here, and you'll be fine. You'll be actually maximizing the scores in the different categories. So here for chapter 4, as always, there's a reading check. In this case, RC4. There's also an RC5 that are both due on Thursday. So you have all up to 4 days to do the RC, along with the CP posting for each chapter. That's Thursday. And so I would recommend, obviously, I always keep saying this, and I keep saying it over and over again, I would recommend that you actually do this earlier than that. Because if you do that, let's say, for example, you do it by tomorrow, by Tuesday, then you have the whole week to start chapter 6 and 7. And again, they also have this kind of the same setup, RC6, reading check 6, RC7, reading check 7, the CP for each of these, and you're done with that chapter. Now, in addition to that, there's actually these other exercises, video exercises that are being assigned, and that is actually the second one. The second video is going to be due this Thursday as well, and then there's the ABBs, the Entrepreneurial Building Blocks. The first one was due last Sunday, but I moved it. I said, you can do it there if you want, or you could actually wait until this Thursday or this week to actually finish it off here. But then this will be the second one due on Sunday. And again, if you advance your work, you actually will be better off, I think. Just, I'll be there technically until Friday at 12 noon. Although I do get into the class over the weekend, but I don't want to be explicitly say that I'll be there. Okay. All right. So this sort of hopefully takes care of the administrative work for the week. Any questions? Awesome. Then I will say we're done. Although, if you have questions beyond this, like Adrian, I think he's going to ask me some questions after this session. You're welcome to stay. Otherwise, I will see you next time. Okay. Thank you, and again, thanks for coming. Thank you. Bye bye.